how can a family get closer to God at home? Really, really good question. I think sometimes we think, if you're a parent here and you're going, how do I make faith part of our home? Sometimes we overcomplicate it and we actually overthink it. And we think, okay, we need to do this in-depth Bible study every night and everybody gets out their journals and we write things together. Little things over the long run make a big difference in the home. And so a couple things, just practical advice for somebody who wants your family to grow closer to God: praying around a dinner table, which, by the way, if you don't eat around a dinner table, it's not a shame thing. This is just looking at statistics and all of that. Families that gather around a dinner table, those kids are way less likely to end up in addiction, way less likely to end up in drugs, quality of life, lower levels of depression. For kids who grow up in a home where you eat a meal together, that's a really big deal. And all the studies and all the stats are coming back to, if you can win the dinner table, you can kind of win the family. And so that's an important step. And as you're around the dinner table, something that we do in our home, one, we pray every time we are together around the table. We talk about just what's going on with our day. And we do highs and lows. What's your high and low from today? And we just talk about things. And we as adults, my wife and I, we're processing our day. Our kids are processing theirs. And those little interactions over time make a big difference. And I'll also say this: to have relationships with other godly influences in the life of your kids is really important. And so for our kids growing up, they're going to know that my wife and I, we follow Jesus. Our faith is very evident in our home. And that is important because more is caught than taught. But we also want other adults in the lives of our kids. Because we have 3 teenagers now, and here's what happens when kids become teenagers. Everything that I say, they're like, yeah, whatever, Dad. Anything that my wife says, okay, Mom, whatever. Another adult says the exact same thing, word for word. Our kids come home, they go, Dad, you're never going to believe it. Jody said this, and it was just brilliant. Or, Ben said this, and it's so right. I'm like, I've been saying that this whole time. Like, I've said this over and over again. But because somebody else said it, all of a sudden it's brilliant. That's normal. That's okay, and that's actually good and healthy. That's part of just our identity formation in adolescence. And so we want to have others in our home as well. We want to have others that our kids are in small group at church, and so they can have those kinds of relationships, and that faith will continue into their adult years.
When you said that, it reminded me, one time we were hanging out, and our kids, we were actually, Robert and Lindsay, at a cabin up north. I think you guys have sold it. But anyway, it was a snow day, and so we all went up there, and our kids were sliding down their driveway on inner tubes, And so my son, who was a younger teenager at the time, I was telling him to do something, and he wasn't listening to me.
Not at all. Totally blowing him off. Yeah.
And Robert goes, hey, Chad, what's it like for thousands of people to listen to you on the weekend? But your 13-year-old, right, won't listen to you. And I said, I'll tell you what it's like. It's like parenting a teenager. That's what it's like. Robert said this, and I just want to echo it. More is caught than taught. So you want to do some things, and we talked a little bit about what we want to do, but you also want to be the right kind of person. They're watching how you love your spouse. They're watching how you talk to each other. They're watching your humility or arrogance, your servant heart or your selfishness. All those things are on display. And so I'll just tell you, I'm ripping this definition off from another pastor, but my definition of success is that those who know me the best respect me the most. So I think in our homes, we just want to model what it means to follow Jesus. That modeling is a big deal, and that's probably rubbing off more than anything else. Because you could have a Bible study every night, be a jerk, and your kids are going, I don't want any of that. But if you love them well, you love your spouse well, you're modeling well, and then you pray a lot, and we do the best that we can. That's a really great question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just going to add this, then we'll go on to the next one. There's no guarantees in parenting as well. And so if you're like, hey, we've set up the right environment, we've modeled it, and our kids have wandered away from the faith, free will is a real thing. And if you look at Adam and Eve in the garden, you had the perfect environment, it was paradise. You had the perfect parent, God was walking with them in the garden, and yet they rebelled. And so you can do the right things and the kids still rebel. And I'll just say this, if that's your story, if your kids have walked away from faith, don't give up on them. Continue to pray for them. I believe that prayer changes things. And don't lose hope, but continue to model your faith and trust God with the rest of that.